Hello EDUSPLORERs, thanks for joining us again and welcome back to our channel. If you are joining for the first time, I appreciate your time. It is important to know that the continent of Africa is making some strategic moves that are not popular among its geopolitical partners. That's the reason why Africa, from the country of South Africa being accused of doing some bad things, to Djibouti that refused the country of the United States to use its territory, and more importantly, Egypt have been pushed back and forth regards to the Gaza situation, and more importantly, the country of Burkina Faso have been accused by the United States of America's general of misusing its own natural resources. Make no mistake, the countries across the Sahel have some scores to settle strategically with the country of the United States of America, as these countries have kicked out the U.S. in the region. The United States of America's general, Mr. Michael Langley, went to the United States of America Senate and made some flimsy excuse in regards to strategic failures of the United States of America across the continent of Africa looking at its engagement. Make no mistake, the United States of America's dismantling of the 100 million US drone base in the country of Niger looking at the city of Algadez, that was a strategic failure of the United States of America. So the accusation coming from Mr. Langley of the United States of America's military is something that it was expected.
I can imagine a situation, though, in which the ruling elite of a country is receiving gratuities on the side that in order to the benefit of the strongman leader and not to the populace of the country. Does that sort of corruption and bribery go on with regard to the Belt and Road?
Absolutely, Chairman. I see this, and I don't mind calling them out, but Captain Traore and Burkina Faso, as they know that both, whether it's their gold reserves, that is all those proceeds are just in exchange to protect the junta regime. There's a number of examples across. Even in Sudan, what's going on with the rapid support forces and Burhan of the Sudan forces, when you get down to it, is all about the revenue that can be drawn out of that, and there are nefarious actors in the CCP or in sometimes Russia are complicit in those activities.
Why I'm talking about this? It is important to know that the United States of America led a delegation to the country of Niger headed by Mr. Michael Langley. That particular delegation was full of condescending approach, lack of strategic thinking, failure to inform the country of Niger how that particular relationship was going to work. More importantly, in that particular situation, the United States wanted to paternalistically inform the country of Niger how to work, who to interact with, what decision to go ahead, and what particular partner to collaborate with. That's the reason why the country of Niger refused the United States of America's perspective and decided to make a strategic relationship with the country of Russia. And for that particular reason, the country of Niger came out clear and said this:
that the agreement was being terminated with immediate effect.
The US presence on the territory of the Republic of Niger is illegal and violates all the constitutional and democratic rules which would require the sovereign people, in particular through its elected representatives, to be consulted on the installation of a foreign army on its territory.
The United States of America is angry to an extent in regards to Burkina Faso because Burkina Faso has decided to kick the United States of America's strategic partner, that is France, from its territory. And these countries across the Sahel are making strategic partnership that does not sit well with Africa's geopolitical partners across European Union and, more importantly, France and the United States of America.
Okay, well, you can't imagine how frustrating it seems to me that this mineral-rich continent has not been able to move to a utilization of the resources to benefit the people there. After all this time, it's a puzzle that we haven't unwound up. The approach that we have had with USAID and the other things like the President's Initiative on AIDS. How does our U.S. approach compare and contrast to the approach of Russia in Africa and also Communist China in Africa?
Oh, Chairman, we've always had the lead. So what you're seeing in those two competitors or challengers, they're following in our wake. They see what works as far as our influence and deepening partnerships through those soft powers, whether it be health diplomacy or whether it be in development type programs. So they're following in our wake, trying to replicate what we do best. And I think the African countries know this, and so this is where, as we start to look at going forward, as State Department starts to reset these programs, looking at what worked and what didn't work, and doubling down on what does work. I think we have enough capital built up in these countries for them to ensure their stabilization and also prosperity. The other two competitors are just trying to replicate what we do best.
It is important to know that Burkina Faso has moved swiftly to make some strategic engagement from nuclear power and, more important, to strategic technology transfer. That's why the United States of America may not sit comfortably with regards to this particular move. And more importantly, this accusation does not go unfounded. This is because Burkina Faso makes some public arrangements regards to the Russians in terms of their strategic relationship. And for those of you who don't understand the translation, I want to allow you to watch this video, and videos like this keep the Americans losing sleep at night.
Coopération militaire technique, mais aussi la coopération dans le domaine de l'économie, dans le domaine de l'énergie nucléaire et toutes les questions. Et on va faire notre mieux pour vous aider de développer dans toutes ces sphères. Et j'ai déjà rapporté à votre président tout ça. Et dans le domaine de la coopération militaire, on va discuter le format de la formation de vos élèves officiers et de vos officiers du niveau différent, et y compris les pilotes dans notre pays.
The region around the Sahel, Burkina Faso, Mali, is the most strategic zone that supported and aided, to an extent, supported a strategic partner in the region. Burkina Faso, Mali, especially Niger, was once called a model of democracy, a model of collaboration by the former United States of America Secretary of State, Mr. Antony Blinken. Because the United States of America failed to see beyond strategic engagement on how this region came under tremendous pressure, looking at their colonial history from the country of France, and to an extent what happened based on the strategic relationship and how they perceived their relationship with the country of France, and to an extent when what happened in the country of Niger at that particular time, the United States of America cut off aid and to an extent refused to engage the country of Niger, and more importantly refused to call it a coup. According to the United States of America's constitution, or based on their particular strategic relationship, if they call it a coup, the United States would have withdrawn at the time. However, if you look at what happened, despite that particular condescending approach and intimidation that came from the United States of America at that particular time from Mr. Antony Blinken, who actually said this:
a call for democratic order. Speaking during his trip to Australia, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken once again condemned the attempted coup in Niger. He said that he had spoken to President Bazoum on the phone and emphasized the significance of the relationship between the US and Niger.
Our economic and security partnership with Niger, which is significant, hundreds of millions of dollars, depends on the continuation of the democratic governance and constitutional order that has been disrupted by the actions in the last few days.
Blinken visited Niger as recently as March, where he announced that the US were ready to commit $150 million in humanitarian aid to Africa's Sahel region.
As a result of that strategic failure, looking at the Sahel region, United States of America's partners, the European Union came out clear and lambasted the countries across the region looking at imposition of sanctions.
We are moving forward for an autonomous sanctions regime to take measures against the putschists. Work has already started.
More importantly, these countries are facing incredible pressure, not just from their own particular local organization, Ecowas, that we've covered in this channel, and again, more importantly, from the United States of America, who once was a strategic partner. The drone base in the city of Algadez was being used for strategic reconnaissance across the region to support military maneuvers around that particular area. However, once that relationship broke down, the United States of America had no choice when that particular announcement was made. So this particular accusation from the United States of America's general to the country of Burkina Faso, I think shows strategic failure and lack of fundamental thinking in terms of geopolitical engagement. Speaking on behalf of Africans, I think is the lowest point that the United States of America would have gone with regards to this particular relationship. However, African countries have risen, they are asking questions. It is important to know that African nations too have decided to make strategic choices that are relevant to their own development. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, if you want to call them the Alliance of the Sahelian State as is currently known, are facing tremendous pressure, and they are looking for partners that can support them maneuver the current challenges they are facing. The population is growing, the middle class at the moment, and these countries want to re-diversify their relationship and look for all options that to an extent can provide them a strategic vision. Their particular collaboration with the country of Russia and China is so important to them. However, it is important to note that these countries have not said they don't want to work with the United States of America or other strategic partners. However, if that particular imposition is as a result of telling them who to work with and who not to work with, who to collaborate with and who not to collaborate with, that's not going to work based on their own perspective. It was always said that the continent of Africa does not make strategic choices on its own, and this particular outing by Mr. Langley, it shows that the United States of America still have unfinished business with regard to strategic relationship across the region. It is important to know that in the country of Djibouti, at the moment, China is scaling its military in that particular area. And more importantly, these countries are to an extent trying to bring Djibouti into some particular fold negotiation. So, an outing with a general who led a failed delegation to the country of Niger to come out clear and talking to an extent, I will call it interference to an extent, talking about a particular country that is facing tremendous pressure and to make sure that it survives in regards to its particular relationship with neighboring countries, and more importantly looking for new partners. And that kind of accusation that Burkina Faso is using in natural resources, I think that is a problem. If the United States of America start caring so much, I think that's where the problem lies. This is a strategic moment for the continent of Africa. Why African countries should come together and look beyond their strategic relationship. They should look inward and look for partners that can support them in this very important time in their history. This comes at a time when the United States of America is demonstrating nationalistic tendency as we observe strategic engagement failing, the U.S. cutting it in the continent of Africa, how the United States of America has lost leverage across the continent of Africa. And if the U.S. becomes so concerned on what's going on in the region, I think there is a big question mark. When did the United States of America all of a sudden become so concerned on what's going on in the countries across the Sahel, and more importantly in Burkina Faso? We are experiencing a new change in the geopolitical circles, and African countries must wake up and look beyond the horizon. These are critical times around the globe, and the continent of Africa having such a swipe from a general who led a failed delegation to the continent of Africa and taking a swipe to a country that is fighting for its own existential threat and survival, I think is condescending. Experts see this as interference and to an extent paternalism. I will call this particular outing by the United States of America General as neocolonialism. It is important to know that Africa does not look so foolish the way a lot of people think. The continent of Africa has risen and is asking questions. That's why Africa was criticized in the past to not take an initiative, and the continent has decided now to diversify its particular relationship, and that does not sit well in the continent of Africa's strategic partners. Let me know in the comment section if you think the continent of Africa is asking questions that does not sit well with its strategic partner. Smash the like button if you think that the outing by the United States of America's general was a weak strategic move. Smash the like button if you feel that the US is feeling the pressure with regards to China's involvement in the continent of Africa and Russia's involvement in the continent of Africa. Smash the like button. We're going to be discussing a whole full lot of strategic discussion here, so I will encourage you to watch some of other informative video on this YouTube channel as we continue to tell Africa's story from a strategic point of view. I want to thank you for watching. Leave me a comment. I will be looking forward to meeting you soon in our next episode. Have a good day. Bye-bye.